Assalamualaikum and hello. Welcome to public speaking class. Throughout history, people have used public speaking as a vital means of communication. What the Greek leader Pericles said more than 2500 years ago is still true today. One who forms a judgment on any point but cannot explain it clearly might as well never have thought at all on the subject. So today, we will learn about the public speaking, similarities between public speaking and conversation, differences between public speaking and conversation, developing confidence, public speaking and critical thinking, as well as the speech communication process. Public speaking, as its name implies, is a way of making your ideas public, of sharing them with other people, and of influencing other people. During modern times, many women and men around the globe have spread their ideas and influence through public speaking. Public speaking is a vital means of civic engagement. It is a way to express your ideas and to have an impact on issues that matter in society. As a form of empowerment, it can and often does make a difference in things people care about very much. How much time do you spend each day talking to other people? The average adult spends about 30% of his or her life in conversation. By the time you finish this module, you will have spent much of your time perfecting the art of conversation. You may not realize it, but you already employ a wide range of skills when talking to people. These skills include the following. First, organizing your thoughts logically. When you are giving someone directions to get to your house, you would take your listener systematically, step by step, from his or her house to your house. You would organize your message. Second is tailoring your message to your audience. Suppose you are a geology major. Two people ask you how pearls are formed. One is your roommate, the other is your 9-year-old niece. You need to tailor your message to your listeners' understanding. Third, telling a story for maximum impact. Suppose you are telling a friend about a funny incident at last week's football game. You don't begin with the punchline. Kesha fell out of the stand right onto the field. Here's how it started. Instead, you carefully build up your story, adjusting your words and tone of voice to get the best effect. Finally, adapting to listener feedback. Whenever you talk with someone, you are aware of that person's verbal, facial, and physical reactions. In many ways, then public speaking requires the same skills used in ordinary conversation. Most people who communicate well in daily talk can learn to communicate just as well in public speaking. Despite their similarities, public speaking and everyday conversation are not identical. Imagine that you are telling a story to a friend. Then, imagine yourself telling the same story to 20 or 30 people. As the size of your audience grows, you will find yourself adapting to three major differences between conversation and public speaking. First, public speaking is more highly structured. It usually imposes strict time limitations on the speaker. In most cases, the situation does not allow listeners to interrupt with questions or commentary. The speaker must accomplish her or his purpose in the speech itself. Consequently, public speaking demands much more detailed planning and preparation than ordinary conversation. Second is public speaking requires more formal language. Slang, jargon, and bad grammar have little place in public speeches. Whether one is delivering a classroom speech, a TED talk, a business presentation, or a famous work such as I Have a Dream, the language should rise to the level of the occasion. Listeners usually react negatively to speakers who do not elevate and polish their language when addressing an audience. A speech should be special. Public speaking requires a different method of delivery is the third difference. When conversing informally, most people talk quietly, interject stock phrases such as like and you know, adopt a casual posture, and use what are called vocalized pauses such as uh, mm. Effective public speakers, however, adjust their voices to be heard clearly throughout the audience. They assume a more erect posture, They avoid distracting mannerism and verbal habits. One of the major concerns of students in any speech class is stage fright. We may as well face the issue squarely. Many people who converse easily in all kinds of everyday situations become frightened at the idea of standing up before a group to make a speech. If you are worried about stage fright, you may feel better knowing that you are not alone. If you feel nervous about giving a speech, you are in very good company. Some of the greatest public speakers in history have suffered from stage fright, including Abraham Lincoln and Winston Churchill. It is perfectly normal, even desirable, to be nervous at the start of a speech. Your body is responding as it would to any stressful situation by producing extra adrenaline. This sudden shot of adrenaline is what makes your heart race, your hands shake, your knees knock, and your skin perspire. Every public speaker experiences all these reactions to some extent. The question is, how can you control your nervousness and make it work for you rather than against you? Here are 6 time tested ways you can turn your nervousness from a negative force into a positive one. You have already taken the first step. You are enrolled in a public speaking course where you will learn about speech making and gain speaking experience. The more you learn about public speaking and the more speeches you give, the less threatening speech making will become. Another key to gaining confidence is to pick speech topics you truly care about, and then to prepare your speeches so thoroughly that you cannot help but be successful. How much time should you devote to preparing your speeches? The standard rule of thumb is that each minute of speaking time requires 1 or 2 hours of preparation time, perhaps more, depending on the amount of research needed for the speech. Confidence is mostly the well known power of positive thinking. If you think you can do it, you usually can. On the other hand, if you predict disaster and doom, that is almost always what you will get. This is especially true when it comes to public speaking. Speakers who think negatively about themselves and their speech experience are much more likely to be overcome by stage fright than are speakers who think positively. Visualization is closely related to positive thinking. It is used by athletes, musicians, actors, speakers, and others to enhance their performance in stressful situations. The key to visualization is creating a vivid mental blueprint in which you see yourself succeeding in your speech. One of the most valuable lessons you will learn as your speech class proceeds is that only a fraction of that turmoil you feel inside is visible on the outside. Your nervous system may be giving you 1,000 shocks, says one experienced speaker, but the viewer can only see a few of them. It may also help to know that there is no such thing as a perfect speech. At some point in every presentation, every speaker says or does something that does not come across exactly as planned. What is critical thinking? To some extent, it's a matter of logic, of being able to spot weaknesses in other people's arguments and to avoid them in your own. It also involves related skills such as distinguishing fact from opinion, judging the credibility of statements, and assessing the soundness of evidence. In the broader sense, critical thinking is focused, organized thinking, the ability to see clearly the relationships among ideas. As you begin your first speeches, you may find it helpful to understand what goes on when one person talks to another. Regardless of the kind of speech communication involved, there are 7 elements: speaker, message, channel, listener, feedback, interference, and situation. Here we focus on how these elements interact when a public speaker addresses an audience. Speech communication begins with a speaker. In public speaking, you will usually present your entire speech without interruption. Your success as a speaker depends on you, on your personal credibility, your knowledge of the subject, your preparation of the speech, your manner of speaking, your sensitivity to the audience, and the occasion. The message is whatever a speaker communicates to someone else. If you are calling a friend, you might say, I'll be a little late picking you up tonight. That is the message, but It may not be the only message. Perhaps there is a certain tone in your voice that suggests reluctance or hesitation. The channel is the means by which a message is communicated. When you pick up the phone to call a friend, the telephone is the channel. Public speakers may use one or more of several channels, each of which will affect the message received by the audience. The listener is the person who received the communicated message. Without a listener, there is no communication. When you talk to a friend on the phone, you have one listener. In public speaking, you will have many listeners. In public speaking, there is plenty of feedback to let you know how your message is being received. Do your listeners lean forward in their seat as if paying close attention? Do they have quizzical looks on their faces? Interference is anything that impedes the communication of a message. When you talk on the phone, sometimes there is static or wires get crossed so that two different conversations are going on at once. That is a kind of interference. The situation is the time and place in which speech communication occurs. Conversation always takes place in a certain situation. Sometimes the situation helps, such as when you propose marriage over an intimate candlelight dinner. That's all for this introduction to public speaking. Thank you and Assalamualaikum.